Damn it! That puts us on the wrong side!
Remember that map that Hudson used to find civvies? That's it. And as we look out the destroyed windows, we can see the gnarled landscape of LV-426. That's where the atmospheric processor was. It detonated and destroyed almost everything. If you were alive here when it went off, you weren't going to be alive very long. We can come later to investigate the destruction.
Great. Now my friggin' tracker's broken. Just watch the red dots. That's what I'm telling you. It's all red. They're everywhere! Focus fire! Focus fire! Cover your sector!
Aliens can climb on the ceilings, on the walls. It's all driven by sophisticated artificial intelligence.
Eat that!
Winner, see if you can cycle.
Looks like somebody moving.
All right, get your asses back over here. Bishop and myself will shore up here and start diagnostics on any system that'll boot up. Lead will head out to the comm relay tower and secure an uplink to all our boys out there. Call them up. Get them back.
I feel like this is going to sound like one of Angry Joe's reviews over one of my normal ones, but I'm feeling a little bit emotional after wasting $60 on a piece of shit game that wouldn't even be worth $20 in today's market. The sheer amount of disappointment that I feel after purchasing Aliens Colonial Marines is very hard to put into words. When I first heard about the game, I was fairly unenthused, especially after the last few games in the Aliens vs. Predator series were fairly forgettable. Then the previews and preview movies came out, and holy shit did they look fucking awesome. This looked to finally be a game that was going to be worthy of the Alien franchise. Unfortunately, the entire preview movies, they were a huge bait-and-switch campaign by Gearbox to try to get people excited for the game. A game, it turns out, that wasn't even actually developed by Gearbox at all. Instead, what we get is an outsourced piece of shit that doesn't even live up to the standards of games released in 2009, let alone now that we're in 2013. Aliens Colonial Marines commits a few cardinal sins of gaming. A forgettable story based on a franchise with millions of hardcore fans. A short campaign. A checkpoint system that's more frustrating than it is helpful. Incredibly stupid AI that literally runs right into your bullets. Pitiful graphics that wouldn't have been acceptable a few years back. An overly long development cycle that the finished product gives no justification for. And most heinously of all, a bait-and-switch preview campaign designed to fool not only the gaming press into thinking that this game was going to be worthwhile, but also the gaming public at large. The story, as it were, is set 17 and a half weeks after the events of the James Cameron movie Aliens, and almost as many weeks after Ellen Ripley dies in the events of Alien 3. The Sulaco has mysteriously returned to orbit LV-426, and a new Colonial Marine ship has arrived to answer the distress call sent out by Corporal Dwayne Hicks. Events take a turn for the worst, and the platoon of Marines ends up stranded on the surface of LV-426, surrounded by the xenomorphs, as well as some Weyland-Yutani enemies. But their presence is never really fully explained. You just sort of have to infer it. That's how great this story is, really. For all the promises of a compelling story that was going to continue the events of Aliens in a way that would completely satisfy fans, what we get is a story that makes about as much sense as Nouvelle Bowl movie, filled with uninteresting and unlikable characters, extremely poor voice acting, and the only saving grace being the nostalgia factor from the license that is taken from. Even playing co-op doesn't really add to the campaign mode, it just makes it easier than it already is. What it does show off, though, are some massive flaws with your AI squad that's with you for most of the game, including blocking doorways, or maybe not letting you get to a friend who's been downed by an enemy. These are great things to have when you're in a game. And the entire campaign can be beaten in single player in about 4 to 6 hours, cheap deaths notwithstanding. Looking at the graphics, the PC version is passable. The console versions, however, look like direct ports of the PC version set to the lowest graphical settings possible. There is no optimization done at all. It's a hack job of low-res textures, stiff and laughable animations, with the only decent thing about the graphics being the lighting effects, and even they were better in the preview build. Hell, the frame rate can't even keep steady with the game looking this bad, and that says a lot. Meanwhile, the preview build graphics looked absolutely freaking amazing. The sound is equally bad for the most part. Sure, the motion trackers and pulse guns sound like they did in the movie, but since they got the actual sound effects from 20th Century Fox to use in the game, if they fucked those up, well, there'd be a special place in hell for those sound guys. But the voice acting on the whole is horrendous. It probably doesn't help that the script is terrible, but the voice actors for the Marines, they sound like they're talking to a brick wall. The music is alright. It actually takes cues from the original soundtrack. But honestly, for the most part, I barely heard the music over my own moans of disappointment as I played through the game. The gameplay is just, well, boring. Enemies run headfirst into your bullets like they know they're in a foobarred game and just want to get the fuck out while the getting is good. The gunplay doesn't feel satisfying in the least, especially since it was decided we needed to have iron sights aiming a la Call of Duty. Here's a hint. We don't. There's almost as many Weyland-Yutani human enemies to fight as there are xenomorph enemies, and with the exception of them being positively ungodly accurate with grenade throws, their AI is just as bad as the xenomorphs. Adding to the bad is there's just no tension in the game, except for one level where you don't have any weapons and must avoid 2 new types of xenomorphs. Aliens itself may have been an action movie more than a horror movie like the previous movie, Alien, but it still had tension. Colonial Marines captures none of this, save for that one level. And for all the talk about how big of fans the development team at Gearbox was, this is a huge letdown. Plus, what in the holy fuck is up with this ammo, health, and armor pickup mechanic? Having to press a button to pick them all up? Who came up with this idea, and exactly how many brain cells do they have working in unison? It's been a staple of shooter games that don't have inventory management to just pick this shit up as you move over it. Not, well, let me hit the button, George, or we're not going to get the stuff. There's no inventory management to worry about. All you should be worrying about is shooting Xenos, not having to stop, aim at the item you need, and then press a button to pick it up. It completely takes you out of the game. There is some nostalgia value to the game, though. Walking around Hadley's Hope and seeing some of the areas that you saw in the movie is kind of cool, for about half a second. Then you look at the graphics and realize maybe I could have made the exact same thing in Minecraft. Almost. Hearing the pulse guns fire is also cool, for a little while. Finding legendary weapons is something, but even that's not that great until you pick up Vasquez's pulse rifle and blow the shit out of some Xenos with it. At least until it runs out of ammo and you can't use it ever again. Plus, there are some cool and interesting new xenomorphs added to the game. Some of them look really awesome, in fact. But these little attempts at fan service ultimately fall short. They're the only reason this game isn't getting a lower score, though. Even the multiplayer isn't all that great on the console version. It uses a Left 4 Dead style 4-on-4 Marines vs. Xenomorphs, but it falls flat on so many levels. The Xenos are hard to control, especially when climbing on walls, and they have a hard time doing any real damage to the Marines unless they can get the jump on one when he's alone. The Marines feel supremely overpowered in most situations, especially since any upgrades they have done to their weapons over the campaign carry over into multiplayer. But the frame rate is also bad and lag is a huge issue on the console version. The PC version, from what I have seen, the multiplayer actually looks like it could be pretty fun, but on the console version, it sucks. That said, the multiplayer is slightly better than the campaign, even on the console version. It's kinda neat how there are separate upgrades for the xenomorphs as opposed to the humans, and that they use a separate experience system for each. And if you can happen to find a decent ping game, it can be semi-enjoyable, though it's far better on the PC, trust me. The console versions of Aliens Colonial Marines are colossal bags of dog shit burning on the front porch of every gamer who's bought them. Its 6-year development cycle should have been warning enough. Finding out about a review embargo the day before release should have been a huge red flag. But the awesome previews made me get it. Don't buy it if you haven't, no matter how much of a fan of the Aliens franchise you are. If you have bought it on the consoles, trade it in while the trading's good. I am. If you bought it for the PC, well, there's no trade-in for you, and I'm truly sorry about that. But at least you can try to remember that the PC version is the only semi-passable version out of them.
That should buy you some time. Keep moving.